Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Only Football. Obviously, don't have Rick here today, but we're going live anyway. And on top of that, you guys might notice that when Rick's not here, the producing is really lacking. And that's because I don't know how he does it, man. I don't know how he hits these buttons at the exact perfect time. And when I go live, I'm already on 26 seconds off the 30-second play clock. It looks a lot harder than or it looks a lot easier than it is. But here we are in the off season. The Kansas City Chiefs are the Super Bowl champions. Oh, it kills me to say it. It really does. But you got to give credit where it's due. They went out and played a good game. Now we're going to turn a page here. And pretty much, unless you're the team that got to the Super Bowl and lost, or you were a team that you felt like didn't get a good shot, good chance in the playoffs, like think about the 49ers, right? Unless you're still sour, we're all ecstatic to move forward and get on with off-season news. Me and Rick, we said in our last episode, it's like New Year's for football. It's the past is the past. Unless you won the Super Bowl or you're bitter, then you're probably not ready yet to move on, for better or for worse. But we got a family on this channel full of Bears fans, uh, Colts, Steelers, Broncos, Packers, like we Giants. We don't none of our teams are really um one of those teams that is still sour. You could make an argument. We've been ready to move on for 8 weeks, at least the Broncos and Bears. The Giants had a little stretch down the end, and kind of the Steelers did too. But now we're in the offseason. So now we're going to start talking about offseason stuff. Usually when the offseason kicks off, there's going to be big names every single year that are going to be available. And we know Tom Brady retired a little while ago, but until that point, he was probably the biggest name. A lot of people saying he's going to go to the Raiders. A lot of people didn't think he was done. He's not going to go out like that against the Cowboys. And I was one of those people. I said there's no way Tom Brady, the GOAT, is going to go out like that. And man, I was wrong. Tom Brady, he did. He went out like that. And now there's still plenty of big names to go around. Um, we're going to talk about, just to give you a rundown, we're going to talk about some of those big names that are available and which teams make sense. We're going to talk about teams that it would make sense to move off of certain contracts. Not every contract that is signed. And honestly, this is the problem in the owner's world with giving guaranteed contracts, is that the contract looks great the day that the ink is drying, but depending on the player, it seems like a lot of times the contract looks kind of bad later, right? When I think of the opposite of that, I think of Mahomes, right? That's a contract that you're still like, we got Mahomes for a bargain. But let's talk about the Ezekiel Elliott contract. Let's talk about the Russell Wilson contract. Let's talk about the Kyler Murray contract. There are plenty of contracts that people probably regret once they get down the road. And in football, you have chances to basically just cut a player, and the money that you will eat, the dead money, it changes year to year. For instance, if we cut Russell Wilson this year, we would eat so much money that we we wouldn't have a football team. But if we did it in 3 years, it lowers by like 70, 60%, something like that, okay? So, some of these players are in those sweet spots, and one of them is Ezekiel Elliott, and we're gonna talk about that contract. We're also gonna talk about Aaron Rodgers and his, journey into the darkness, and I'm gonna probably go on a little tiny rant because it's necessary and it's overdue. So definitely stay tuned for that. And then we're going to talk about, I don't know, what if the Vikings traded for Kirk Cousins and sent Derek Carr to the Vikings? Have you looked at their contracts? because it actually makes a lot of sense. It really does. I mean, it's sometimes people maybe need a change of scenery to kind of excel. People like Derek Carr, maybe you need to feel like they're not wanted, right? Oh, they didn't want me. I'm going to show them. I mean, if the Pro Bowl passing competition was any inclination of what Derek Carr is going to be moving forward, I guess it's going to be pissed off and on a mission to prove the Raiders wrong. That's what I got from that. So we're going to talk a little bit about something like that. And then we're going to talk about the guys that we talked about last week, the Jimmy Garoppolos of the NFL. There are plenty of them. We're going to break down some contracts. But did you guys look at the QB index ranking that was posted on the NFL's website? I'm going to see if I can pull it up here. This wasn't in my notes, but this is definitely something that needs to be discussed. This is something that they do at the end of every single Super Bowl where they they basically rank how the quarterbacks were. And let's see, January 12th, 2023. This is it. Okay. Okay. So number 1 was Patrick Mahomes. Okay. Yes. I will say that is a good number 1 to have. He played 17 games. He stayed healthy, 67.1 percentage, over 5,000 yards, 8.1 yards per attempt, 41 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 358 rushing yards. Won the Super Bowl. That's a good number 1 to have. Now, what I'm gonna bring up about this, and number 2 is Jalen Hurts. All right. So if you've been following this podcast, you've heard us talk a lot about Jalen Hurts, underappreciated. When's he going to get the credit that he deserves and stuff like that? Well, this was the rankings at the end of the regular season. This didn't even involve the playoffs. They just updated it to here it is. They just updated it. And now this is from the conclusion of the Super Bowl. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, Jalen Hurts. That didn't change. Okay. Number 3, Joe Burrow. So far, I really like this list. Honestly, I probably have Joe Burrow. I mean, it's hard, right? Because Joe Burrow is a pure quarterback, and we heard Dan Orlovsky talk about this a little bit. Like Patrick Mahomes is definitely the better football player, but Joe Burrow, it might be the best like pure quarterback when it comes to making reads and going through progressions and just being a quarterback, right? Mahomes does all that stuff kind of off foot, just little backyard football. Joe Burrow, he doesn't rely on athleticism in his makeup to have a good play. Where Patrick Mahomes, I think a lot of times, I don't want to say he relies on that. It's just something that he happens to use a lot. Where Joe Burrow is very confident that if his players are where they need to be at this specific time, he can throw the ball in all of the holes and there's nothing the defense can do. And he's going to go on to have a very, very good career. And man, I'm a huge fan of this guy. He played, it's weird, 2022 stats says 19. Oh, because it's including the playoffs. Gosh, I'm an idiot. How do I have a podcast? He had 5,196 yards. Jalen Hurts missed a couple games. Okay. So he played 18 games to Joe Burrow's 19 games, but Jalen Hurts played obviously an extra game there in the Super Bowl at the end of the year because Jalen Hurts actually missed, I believe it was 2 games. So you got 1, 2, 3 games plus you would play a total of 17, 18, 19, 20. So he missed 2 games. Yeah. Okay. So look, do I hate it? Let me just compare Joe Burrow straight to Jalen Hurts. Okay. Joe Burrow, I said it, over 5,000 yards, 5,196 to be exact. Jalen Hurts had 4,280. Could he have gotten 800 yards in 2 games? I think so. I think he could have got 400 yards against the Cowboys. And I think they played the Commanders or something like that. Or, yeah, I think it was the Commanders. And then they played the Giants to close the season. But look, here's what's hard about Jalen Hurts is I said this and I sound like a victim of the moment when I say it, but I'm sure other people will eventually say something like this. This is different than Lamar Jackson to me. To me, when I watch Lamar Jackson, I watch a quarterback that is extremely good at running the football, who can throw. And I know people say he's a running back that can throw. I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not going to throw shade on Lamar Jackson like that, because when they've asked Lamar to win the game with his arm, I've seen him do it, and I've seen him throw for more than 400 yards in a game and get 5 touchdown passes, and people are still out there somehow, and it's because of his physique, right? It's just like you're too fast to be a real quarterback, right? It's almost a mental thing. But when I look at Jalen Hurts, I almost feel like he is something we haven't seen quite yet ever, maybe, because I think he's got some of that vision. There's over 100 plays that Sirianni could call where he ran the ball. So he is a running back. He's a running threat, but he also is a great quarterback. And the best way to describe Jalen Hurts, I feel as if Tim Tebow was actually a really good quarterback, right? And faster. I mean, Jalen Hurts is a character that you make on Madden, and your buddy tells you you can't play with him. He what is the weakness of Jalen Hurts? I thought he did a great job going through progressions. His leadership is top tier. I think he's the best leader probably of anybody in the league. I'm not even kidding. I think there are other fantastic leaders like Joe Burrow. I think Mahomes is a leader, but no, man, I feel like Jalen Hurts really is like when you get around a strong leader, it's contagious. You can feel it, and I think that's who Jalen Hurts is. But what about this argument? I mean, about this list confused me is that it made me look at the past years. Okay. So it made me look at other years. And you guys are about to have your mind blown. So Patrick Mahomes finished first in in this year, and he should have. He won the Super Bowl. Excuse me, Adam Schefter just got a message that Rex Ryan reportedly is one of the favorites right now to land the defensive coordinator job in Denver. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But this is the 2021 QB index that was done after the Super Bowl last year. Okay. So Mahomes was number one this year. Last year it was Tom Brady. Okay. So basically, whoever, because it's interesting. I think it's because Tom Brady retired. I don't know if you guys remember. I did talk about this last year. I said, "You're telling me Tom Brady, and this is the Tom Brady, right? That played all last season. You're telling me who's the best quarterback in the NFL? At one point, he was. He wasn't last year, and this is predicting the next year. So I was right. Tom Brady was not the number one quarterback in the NFL. And then you go down to number two, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I don't know how you can even make that argument right now. You know, he's 40 years old. They missed the playoffs. I think Aaron Rodgers is a phenomenal quarterback, and I would trade in a heartbeat to have him. Um, Maybe I would see one more year with Russ, but Aaron Rodgers is an elite quarterback. But number two, if you needed one guy for one game, that's who your number two is over Josh Allen at number three. Okay, okay. So we got Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. Number four, Justin Herbert. Number five, Matthew Stafford. Number six, Joe Burrow. Number seven, Patrick Mahomes. How? How did anybody ever let this happen? Somebody that works for the NFL put Patrick Mahomes at number seven because he lost in the AFC Championship. I can't believe it. I mean, what did what did Aaron Rodgers do? He lost in his only playoff game. Like at least Mahomes won one. I just if you were looking at this the way I was looking at it, I was going through just seeing if Mahomes was number 1 every single year since he came in, or if he was top 3. I figured I'm like, he's probably top 3 since he took over. And the NFL pushed him to 7 last year. And of course, now he's number 1 because he won the Super Bowl. But I just feel like for the NFL and whoever's writing this article, and this one specifically was published by Greg Rosenthal, this is a bad piece, man. There's no way in hell that Patrick Mahomes is going to be, he's not, nor has ever, nor will be a 7th best quarterback in the league, maybe for the next, I would say 15 years. Then we can talk about 7. It's ridiculous. And I don't even like Patrick Mahomes. So go figure, right? So I just had to get that off my chest while telling you guys the new QB index going into 2023. Mahomes number 1, Hurts number 2, Joe Burrow number 3. I like that top 3. I probably have it exactly the same way right now, to be perfectly honest. But now let's talk about something that is going on in Jerry Jones' world. And if you guys haven't heard, the Cowboys have some serious decisions to make. And those decisions involve Ezekiel Elliott. Um, Elliott has a 16.7 cap hit coming up, and Pollard is set to become an unrestricted free agent. So decisions, 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 right? So I want to make a couple points on this specific piece here. The first point I want to make is that Ezekiel Elliott is the second highest paid running back in the league, but he does have the highest contract, 90 million over 6 years. Okay, but he doesn't make the most per year because Christian McCaffrey makes 16 million a year, but his contract's only 4 years. So, more value, 1 more million a year, apples oranges, right? But is Ezekiel Elliott worth Christian McCaffrey money? Let me tell you who Ezekiel Elliott's tied for making 15 million a year. Alvin Kamara. Number 4, Dalvin Cook at 12.6. I think that you could make a real argument that all of these people, Dalvin Cook is a really good running back, but he's got his problems staying healthy. And if you have him on fantasy, you know what I'm talking about. He's always got something going on. I think a lot of it has to do with he played at Florida State. There's turf in Minnesota, and I think that turf is messing with him a lot. But I've been saying that before the NFLPA said it, so I said it first. But Christian McCaffrey seems like the only guy on this list that I would even consider taking that money, right? I would, out of all 4 of these guys, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Christian McCaffrey, these are the top 4 paid running backs in the league. Christian McCaffrey is the only one I'll buy. And even that, it depends what team, okay? And we are kind of going into an era now where people are saying, should we spend money on a running back? Should we draft a running back? Is it even worth it to throw the amount of money Ezekiel Elliott? He had a $90 million contract. That's a lot of money, okay? So if they cut him right now, they'll save $16.7 million. Let's look at Ezekiel Elliott and what he did this season, okay? So in 2000, this is from the year he was drafted, okay? His first year, his rookie year, he had 1,631 yards on the ground. His next year, 983, dealt with injuries. Then he had 1,434. Then he had 1,357. That's solid, right? Then he had 979. Then he just broke 1,000 last year by 2 yards. And then this year he had 876 yards rushing. And I got legendary pest control in here. Says, I like Dalvin and Kamara. And I do too. Trust me. And welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. But the point I'm making is not that you wouldn't love to have these guys in your team. The point is, at what price? Because $15 million, you're paying Ezekiel Elliott the same amount of money as Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that to me, that's insane. You're paying a guy a contract that's worth $90 million. Okay, this is unheard of. The highest paid running back right now is McCaffrey. His contract's only 64 million. So they tied themselves to Ezekiel Elliott for the long haul, which means Jerry Jones got really caught up in a vision. He was probably thinking back and remembering somebody named Emmett Smith, and he was like, "You're gonna be Ezekiel Elliott, and you're gonna be him for a long time, but for sure you're gonna be that guy for 6 years." And Ezekiel Elliott just kind of started fading away, getting a little worse and a little worse, showing up to training camp. Is he a little overweight? Yada, yada, yada. And then it seems like the fans would have absolutely lost their ever loving mind watching Ezekiel Elliott play, but they didn't. And it's because Tony Pollard saved him. Tony Pollard gave them that juice, the speed, the burst play, the explosiveness. And the fans were like, okay, okay, I guess we got a 1-2 punch. Okay. But let me be perfectly clear about something. You don't pay $90 million for a 1-2 punch, and you don't pay $90 million for a guy that doesn't even get over 1,000 yards a season, not even touching 900 yards, averaging 3.8 yards a carry. His longest run of the season, guys, it was 27 yards. This is not a $90 million man. Now, if I'm Jerry Jones, I think I'm just going to pull Ezekiel Elliott in the room and say, hey, look at your numbers. You are digressing. You haven't had, a $90 million season. You have never had as many yards as you had your rookie season. Every single season since you were a rookie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, has been worse than, well, not progressively worse, but you have never gotten to that rookie 1,631 yards. He never did it. And that was the most he ever averaged per carry. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry that season. And Legendary said, the money. I'm a Cowboys Chiefs fan. Zeke, Dak are going to kill us. And you know what it's like, man. You know what it's like when you get tied to a contract. And I'm a Broncos fan, so I'm dealing with it right now with Russell Wilson. I mean, that's a terrible contract. But I feel like right now, Tony Pollard is the better running back out of the two. So you cut Ezekiel Elliott, and guess what? You save $16.7 million in cap space, and Pollard's a free agent. You could probably turn around and give 16.7 million that you saved to Tony Pollard, right? You save money, but really, I mean, you didn't really save money. You used Ezekiel Elliott to buy his backup. $16.7 million. Okay. Let's look at some of these running backs in the league right now. I mean, just as far as, money goes, okay? The question is not, do you need a good running back? Everybody wants a good running back. The question has always been, do you pay running backs? All right. So let's look from top to bottom. Okay. So you got your guys in the top 10, the exact guys that you think would be up there: Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Delvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley. James Conner, surprisingly, pretty high too. Right there with Leonard Fournette. They're both making $21 million, or their total value is $21 million. They make $7 million a year. Okay, so look at this drop off. Okay. So you have Christian McCaffrey. This is how much they make per year: 16 million. Then Alvin and Ezekiel Elliott make 15. Okay. And that's like your 1, 2, 3. And now you got Delvin Cook, 12.6, Derrick Henry, 12.2, Aaron Jones, 12, Joe Mixon, 12. And now it drops all the way to 7, where Saquon Barkley is. So there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So basically, you have to be a top 8 running back in the league to get that kind of money. And there are only so many top 8 running backs. And I know for a fact that Ezekiel Elliott is not a top 8 running back right now. And there's not a person in the world that could convince me. So let's look down the list, okay? So there's a huge drop. We go from 12 million all the way to 7 million. There's no 11, 10, 9, 8. We go all the way to 7 million, okay? Now let's look at some of these people that I think you could win a Super Bowl with. How about Najee Harris? Look at that. He's on his rookie contract. He's making $3 million a year. Let's look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire, making $2.7 million a year. Okay. Let's look at Javonte Williams, promising young guy, but he had an injury, but he's going to be really good. 2 million, 2,200,000. Okay. DeAndre Swift, he's good. 2 million. Kenneth Walker, 2 million. Jonathan Taylor, 1.9. Jonathan Taylor's not even cracking 2 million. And you got Ezekiel Elliott making $90 million in 6 years. You're crazy. You're out of your mind. So this is my point that I want to drive home is that you can go get a running back. And here's a perfect example. You can go get a running back that can win you a Super Bowl without spending an absurd amount of money. The only teams that should do that are the ones that are, let's say, the 49ers. And they're just like, you know what? We're not paying a quarterback. Let's get one more weapon. Let's get Christian McCaffrey. Okay, I get it. I honestly do. But honestly, even the Saints, they're paying Alvin Kamara. His total contract value is $75 million. If you have a $75 million running back and you did not make the playoffs, you made a bad contract. Period. The only reason, it's not a coincidence. The only reason I'm like the 49ers one I like, it's because it worked. The team was solid. They're not paying a quarterback. The Saints aren't really paying a quarterback, but they're also not winning. You have to win as well, right? A running back is not going to, it's not a quarterback. You can win a Super Bowl with a mid running back. You can't win a Super Bowl with a mid quarterback. Look at this. This is the wide receivers. This is the same thing that happens with wide receivers. Look at, you said he's a Chiefs fan. The Chiefs wide receivers, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. Marquez Valdez-Scantling makes $10 million. Juju makes 3.7. Kadarius makes 3.4. Sky Moore makes 1.6. All of their contracts together, that's 4 wide receivers. They make $17 million a year, all together. They just won the Super Bowl. I mean, the top paid wide receiver right now is making $30 million a year. You could add every Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver and times it by 2, and that's just one contract for the Dolphins. And that is, to me, it's just like, whoa, how do you pay these guys like this absurd amount of money? And no wonder Andy Reid is like, bro, like go get your money because we're not going to pay it here. And obviously he was right. He's like, look, we're not going to pay you $120 million so that we can lose people like Jones, right up the middle, or even that offensive line that was so good this year. Obviously Travis Kelce, he's a piece. You can't move him ever. And they also have, cap space to make moves and do things. Like, they're in good shape. The Chiefs are the next dynasty, and I've been saying it for a couple years, and it's because of the decisions like Andy Reid's decision to not pay Tyreek Hill $30 million a year. The Davante Adams deal, great wide receiver. Everybody wants a Davante Adams, right? $28 million a year. That's 10 more million than all of the Chiefs receivers put together. So what is my point? Well, here it is, okay? When you go down the list of top 4 wide receivers, you got Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, Davante Adams, and Tyreek Hill. I know that the Dolphins went through some injuries, but these guys didn't make the playoffs. The Dolphins did, but that's what I meant with the injuries. But the Raiders, Cardinals, and Rams didn't. And they just restructured Cooper Kupp after his Super Bowl. So they didn't get to the Super Bowl on that contract. He got the contract after the Super Bowl. And that's why a lot of teams actually end up trading their players, because when you win a Super Bowl, your value is really high, and it's impossible for the team to retain all the same players. But you go down the list. I mean, DK Metcalf's getting a pretty good check, 72 million total value, making $24 million a year. That's pretty solid. And I do think, if you got a guy like that, he should be making good money. But what I love is what the Broncos did, because they got Cortland Sutton. Let's see, they got Cortland Sutton on $15 million a year, right? And I really think if Cortland Sutton had a good wide receiver, I mean, a good quarterback, they would be able to. I mean, he would be up. I think he could get into the top 10 in numbers. Okay. Tyler Boyd, 10 million a year. Devontae Parker, way overpaid at $10 million a year, to be quite honest. But you see this a lot, and I think it happens with more desperate franchises, is that you haven't had something to celebrate in a while. So let's say the Broncos are go get DeAndre Hopkins, right? The whole fan base is like, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm like, $27 million a year. Why? Like the Chiefs are showing you the blueprint of how to win Super Bowls and do it often. And if you didn't think the Chiefs learned it from someone, look at what the Patriots did. Besides that year where they had Randy Moss, who did the Patriots have? Like, who are their stars? Rex Burkhead, Wes Walker, um, Julian Edelman. I mean, the Patriots were the same way. They're like, look, we have a star quarterback. We don't need to pay our wide receivers $30 million a year. And I think that they believe that the teams that do it are fools. I think they're happy for the players, but I feel like the people that really understand the business are like, no, we're not giving a running back $90 million, and we're not giving a receiver $30 million. The only exception is if you got to have the quarterback thing figured out. I really believe if you have Aaron Rodgers and you want to throw Devontae Adams a bone, go for it. But if you're the Cardinals and your team is absolute trash right now, you need to trade DeAndre Hopkins like yesterday and get as much picks and cap space, and you got to fix it, because you can't. What is it? It's like parking a Lamborghini in front of a mobile home. It's like that's DeAndre Hopkins on the Cardinals this year. He's a Lamborghini parked in front of a mobile home, and it's the same thing with a lot of these other receivers that are on this list. And then quarterbacks. Let's look at the quarterbacks, because I think there's going to be some trades. Aaron Rodgers, who knows what he's going to do? Obviously, that's a big story right now. He's the highest paid quarterback in the league. He makes $50 million a year. Let me hit some of these chats really quick. Legendary said Broncos intriguing. And he said Chiefs did it right. Bye bye, Tyreek. You're right. 4 quarters equal $1. Off-season trade, please. Rodgers and a first-round pick to the Chiefs for Mahomes. No way that would ever happen. Ever. 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 Well, how many? Wait, you said in a first-round pick. You didn't even say multiple. You would have to throw in a first. It would never, ever happen. That's like the one player. You know what they say? They say, I'm not going to make calls for this player, but I'll take calls, right? Like a good GM always takes calls. Even the players that you think could never get traded, the good GMs take the phone call, because you never know what they're going to say. The Von Miller was one of those guys that was untouchable in Denver, and the phone rang a lot. And one of those times it was the Rams, and the price was right. So I never say never, but Patrick Mahomes, never. Never, ever, ever. But this is a perfect example of everything I'm saying. Russell Wilson, number 2 highest paid quarterback, $245 million contract, making $49 million a year. The second highest paid quarterback in the league. And look, I think things are going to turn around with Sean Payton. I need one more year before I totally lose my mind about this contract. But There should have never been a contract extension. Russell Wilson was traded to the Broncos and he was still under contract. The Broncos wanted to give him a new contract as some kind of vote of confidence and we believe in you. Okay. Well, Russell Wilson is such, a PR guy that he's always kind of portraying this good guy. I'm a really solid person. I do all this charity. What did you think was going to happen? If you couldn't get a done deal with Russell Wilson, he wasn't going to sit out. That doesn't look good for his brand, and his brand's important to him. So I really want to ask everybody that was a part of that deal, why the hell was there a hurry to get Russell Wilson, the second most money of any quarterback in the league? What exactly was the hurry? To We all know that we had confidence in Russell Wilson. You don't need to give him $245 million. And honestly, I thought it was going to work. But even so, you still got to sit back and I feel like at least watch a couple games. You can't you can't make moves like that, And I honestly, I don't even know why it was being pushed for. Russell Wilson was coming off his worst season in Seattle when he got traded to Denver. So why would that be the time to go get the, highest contract you've ever got? Doesn't make any sense to me. Kyler Murray's contract doesn't make any sense to me. He makes $46 million a year in a contract that's worth 230 and he's got 160 million of it guaranteed. And we've seen some injury stuff. We definitely seen a lot of leadership problems. And we got Legendary Pets right here saying 50 mil to the right QB. Yep, I agree. $50 million to the right QB, and you can do whatever you want, man. Like Patrick Mahomes, right here. It says 45 million. I was pretty sure it was 50 million for 10 years, total of $500 million in his contract. But they're saying 450 here. I thought I saw 500 because everyone was like, it's $500 million. Regardless, this is overthecap.com. Regardless, I just proved it, right? If you have the right QB, just like Legendary Pet said, the right QB, then you can pay 4 receivers $17 million and win a Super Bowl with a running back that is, let's just take a look. Let's see. Let's just for shits and giggles see where Pacheco lands. Well, Jerick McKinnon makes $1 million. $1 million. And let's see. Prime Pacheco right here. He made $934,000 this year. Guys, this is ridiculous. And I think you know what I'm getting at is that you literally, for the price of DJ Moore this year, the Chiefs paid for 4 wide receivers and 2 running backs and won the Super Bowl because they had the right quarterback. And I mean, honestly, you couldn't have said it better. 50 million for the right guy. Absolutely, I agree with that. And then you make a good point. They did steal DeAndre Hopkins in the first place. That how that deal ever went through is actually beyond me completely. And said Chiefs are bad example players take a cut to go there. Well, none of these guys have taken a cut. So all the guys that I've named and actually you see that some players aren't willing to take cuts, like Tyreek Hill. He didn't take a cut. He went and got his money. You see players moving a lot, and the guys that I just named are rookie contracts, like Isaiah Pacheco. And what are your? Let's see, Sky Moore is yeah. These are just like young dudes, man. Let's see, is this their age? Yeah. Okay, so look at this. The reason these guys aren't paid yet is because they're on rookie contracts. And that's kind of my whole point with don't pay a running back 90 million. Go draft another one because there's another, I say every 3 years, there's probably a good draft class. And even when there's not a good draft class, look at Pacheco, right? He wasn't highly sought after. I mean, he just kind of blew up. But Sky Moore is 23 years old. This is a 23-year-old player. He's still a kid. Let's see another one. Kadarius Toney's 24. So you got a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old. Scantling's your oldest guy, and he's also your highest paid receiver. So that actually makes sense. But to say Scantling took a pay cut. I don't know. Is Marquez Valdez Scantling before this season, right? Because these deals are made before the season, so it wouldn't be fair to look back on it with what we know now. But when this season started off, was Valdez Scantling worth more than $10 million? I don't think so. I don't think that he was worth, or actually, he got $15 million. Excuse me. So, I mean, I don't think that he was worth more than, let's see, Zay Jones. I think that's right about where he should be. Zay Jones is the receiver for the Jaguars, like a very good, serviceable guy, but not an elite talent by any means. Jerry Judy's making 15 mil a year, but he was also a really high pick. Traylon Burks, who was just drafted to the Titans, is making about 15 a year. I feel like that's right where he should be. He said Kirk got a fat bag and ruined it. Kirk got a fat bag and ruined it. Or at least that's what everyone said. Oh, okay. So you're talking about Kirk Cousins' deal. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I don't look, the Minnesota Vikings are in, I think, good shape now because they were able to hire Brian Flores. So if they can get the defensive side figured out, I think they're going to be in decent shape. Okay. And to be honest, they still have a lot of weapons. Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, um, Thielen. They made that trade for the tight end, the out of Detroit, Hawkinson. I don't know if I mentioned Dalvin Cook. I mean, there's a lot of talent on that team. So when if like when you compare Kirk Cousins' deal, he's making $35 million a year. That's, you could make an argument that that's high, but look at the guy right above him, Dak Prescott, and the guy right below him making 2 million less a year, Jared Goff, and this is hilarious. And underneath him is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is still making $32 million a year. Wow. How is Carson Wentz still pulling in that kind of money? Meanwhile, Matt Ryan's like, dude, I don't care if you bench me. I'm making $30 million a year. 30 million a year. So really the drop off is Ryan Tannehill makes 29. Tom Brady took that pay cut. Wow, Tom Brady's the real GOAT. You know, Tom Brady played this season making exactly half the money Aaron Rodgers made. He made $25 million to play this season while Aaron Rodgers was out there making 50. But there's a huge drop from 25 million, okay? Because it drops all the way to 15 million. And now we're getting into our tier twos, our Baker Mayfields, our Jameis Winstons, our Marcus Mariotas, Trevor Lawrence because he's still on the rookie deal, Joe Burrow because he's still on a rookie deal. Joe Burrow's probably going to get paid this season. And he's probably going to be, I would say, somewhere between Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. And he should be. He should be. But then we get into the, tier threes making 8 million a year. The let's see, the Trey Lance, Zach Wilsons to, you know, what's really hard to see is the fact that Zach Wilson makes only $200,000 less than Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow took his team to the Super Bowl and almost did it twice in 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, we have Bill in the chat. What's up, Bill? Good to see you. Long time no see. As you can see, we don't have Rick here with us today, but he's going to be with us next week. And we're just kind of going over some of these contracts, what jumps off the screen, and teams that really need to move off of some things. And the first one that we talked about was Ezekiel Elliott. And since you just got here, I'll just say the Cowboys would save $16.7 million in cap space if they got rid of him. We went through his stats. It was a bad business decision. It might have been good at the time, but Ezekiel Elliott never had as many rushing yards as he had his rookie year. And he never really got back to that. And I do think he plateaued. He averages 3.8 yards a carry this season, and his longest run was not even he didn't even break 20 yards. 27 yards his long or he didn't break 30 yards. Like I can't believe that. 27 yards. Like I bet Dak Prescott's longest run is more than 27 yards. It's just like I can't believe you're paying this guy $90 million, but we'll move on from that. So, one of the other big storylines, okay, is what is going to happen for the Raiders and what are the Raiders' best quarterback options to replace Derek Carr. The Raiders tried to uh, shop Derek Carr, but they weren't able to get a deal done. He went and traveled to the Saints, which I don't know if you guys saw. I called that, and I hate to pat myself on the back, but it was really cool because I called it. I said, "I think he might go to the Saints." I had no sources on that. I just said it, and then it was like the next day I woke up and sent it to Rick. It was like Derek Carr to visit Saints. I'm like, dude. Um, but they weren't able to get a deal done, and Derek Carr just I feel like he just put a middle finger up to the Raiders and said, "You know what?" And it was like they had I think they only had like 10 days and then they were gonna have to pay, Derek Carr, like $10 million. I just threw that number out there. They're gonna have to pay him a large amount of money, but if they cut him before that date, they wouldn't have to pay it. But the Raiders had Derek Carr, so they were trying to get like a second round pick or something while they had him. And I feel like Derek Carr just was like, "Hey, I'll make a deal with you, but please don't make this move until after this date because I don't want the Raiders to get anything in return." So, a lot of gossip there. What do you expect? It's the offseason. Bill said Shepard is gone. Automatic void in the contract he signed. I'll miss him, injury prone as he was. Oh, Shepard's gone. With you on Elliott. Yeah, and Bill, because you lost Tony, and man, Tony looked like not to pour salt on the wound, but Tony did look like uh, I don't know if it's Mahomes and Andy Reid, but he looked like he's a young guy with a lot of potential. He's only 23 years old. So I mean, 24, 23, it seemed a little young to move off of him. Oh man. I just want to say thank you guys for being with us. Like the season's over, but we're not going to stop doing these videos, and I just like to know that you guys love football enough to keep up with it in the off season as much as we do. Um, because honestly, I love this stuff so much. I'd probably just do this if there was nobody on the camera. It just gives me an excuse to tell my girlfriend I'm working. Okay, so let's get back. The Derek Carr situation. Okay, so I ranked what I think the best case scenarios would be for the Raiders. Mind you, I hate the Raiders because I'm AFC West. Okay, so I want them to fail miserably, but I'm gonna pretend that I don't absolutely hate them, and I want their best interest in mind. Okay, number one, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers. This is a no-brainer. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback that may be available. We're still waiting on an official announcement from Aaron Rodgers, but for now, we're just like Aaron Rodgers in the dark. I know, it's funny. I worked hard on that. So, I mean, outside of Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay, the only other option has been the New York Jets. There's been a lot of talk about the New York Jets. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers would go to the New York Jets because he's been pretty adamant about not wanting to be like Brett Favre. And I think it would be a little weird that Aaron Rodgers, talks about retirement kind of in the same manner that Brett did at the end of his career. And then there's a young guy on the bench like Jordan Love, and Aaron Rodgers was that young guy. And then eventually they're like, we're going to go with the young guy, Brett. And now they're having meetings after the season, and Aaron Rodgers is discussing if the Packers intend on keeping Aaron Rodgers, or if they want to see what Jordan Love is, because they did use a first round pick on him. And Aaron Rodgers in the same scenario, it's like history repeated itself. But how much will it repeat itself? I think if he went to the Jets, that would just start getting a little spooky. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to be known as a guy that was Brett Favre's part two. Aaron Rodgers made it clear that he wanted to retire in Green Bay. My opinion on it is that Aaron Rodgers will stay in Green Bay or he will retire. I don't think he would go play anywhere else. But the reason I do think Vegas is an option is because it's a huge market. Rodgers loves the golf. You can definitely golf more there than you can in Wisconsin. And he might just go on his like F it tour, at the end of the year. Let's go to Vegas. Let's gamble a little bit. Let's get weird. Let's go to some hotels parties. Let's do some stuff we don't normally do. And who cares if we win? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying like maybe Vegas could be an option just because it's Vegas, right? But that is like as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers retires a Packer. That's what I would bet on if I had to put money on it. Number 2 best scenario for the Raiders. This one might catch you off guard. And I'm going to look at this really quick. Bill said it would be spooky, but the Jets have a legit defense. It's his only real alternative. Raiders equals meh. Yeah, but if he stays with the Packers, I would get it. Yeah, no, I agree. Honestly, that's what they said too about the Broncos last year. It's like they're just a quarterback away, and we got Russell Wilson, and it was like, oh, we're going to be good now, and we weren't. And the Jets are kind of in that same narrative, right? They're just a quarterback away. Then Nathaniel Hackett gets the job as the Jets offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, the Broncos were trying to get Aaron Rodgers, so they hired Nathaniel Hackett to be our head coach. Rodgers still didn't want to go, so I'm not sure Nathaniel Hackett has that much pull on Aaron Rodgers' career decisions, or I think it would have happened last year. But I do think it's the same damn story, but now Bronco fans have turned into Jet fans. Like we were the Jets fan base last year. We got Nathaniel Hackett. We're shouting at him while he's golfing and come to Denver. We'll see. He said, we'll see. Let's write a whole article on what we'll see means. Like the Jets. I don't know. New York is also a big market. So like, I can't say like Vegas is a huge market. It's just, would he do it? I don't know. I don't know if he would do it. I don't think he would jump to the AFC. But then again, Vegas is the AFC as well. Like there's a lot of unknowns. I think it's just like the Brady thing, to be quite frank with you guys. When Brady chose Tampa, I was like, Tampa? Like, what? What are you doing, Tom? Like, ew. Like that's gross. Why would you want to go to Tampa? Like, because they've been bad for so long. It's just like kind of gross. I don't know. And that's how I feel about the Jets a little bit. But then Tom Brady did it and made them cool again. And you know what? That's what actually cool people do. They don't go to places because they're cool. They make them cool. And Aaron Rodgers could make New York cool, just like Brett Favre did when he was a Jet. And I feel like that would be the same deal if he went to play with Devontae Adams again in Vegas. Like the Raiders would be cool. Dude, they would be ecstatic if Rodgers came. I don't think it'll happen. So let's move on to number 2. Trade for Kirk Cousins. Trade for Kirk Cousins. Okay. This is the one I said that might be a little weird to you. Cousins and Carr might as well be the Spider-Man meme of second tier quarterbacks, right? It's just like they have a strong arm. They can put up gaudy numbers at times, but they're both getting later in their 30s. They've shown plenty of times that they kind of can fall short of the moment, right? Sometimes they just kind of crumble in a big moment. So why would the Raiders want another version of Carr? That's probably what you're asking, right? Because it almost looks like these two quarterbacks on paper are just like you're just like trading in a broke down truck for a broken down SUV. It's like, what did we do here exactly? Well, the Raiders have a great group of passing weapons for McDaniels, and we know that. And they need a QB who can get the ball to Adams. Okay. Waller and Renfro are also really good pieces to keep in mind, but Devontae Adams is like the guy there, right? Cousins can do right by them. He can get them the ball. We know that about Cousins. One thing we know based on what we saw from him last year with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and Adam Thielen was that Kirk Cousins is good at showing a lot of love to his wide receivers, and that might be something that Josh McDaniels in particular is interested in. You can say a lot of things about Kirk Cousins, but he does do a good job of feeding his wide receivers. And I do think that that could be an option because I do think Cousins is a little more aggressive and he can stretch the fields a lot better than Derek Carr did. Okay. So I know that that is a interesting take, but I feel like we might have seen it before. Probably should have had something in my mind before I said that, but I'm trying to think of a time because we're kind of most trades I think happen and it's like it's picks, right? But not very often do I see like big names, right? There's been times where it's like we'll give you I don't know, we'll give you Melvin Gordon and a third round pick for some defender that I immediately have to go to Google and search because I don't know who they are, right? When you think of blockbuster trades like the one we made for Russell Wilson, who did we give them? We gave them Shelby Harris, who, unless you're a Bronco fan, you had to look up. We gave him Noah Fant, who you probably fantasy football helps a little bit, but you still might have had to look him up. And we gave him a shit ton of picks, right? But this trade would be like literally you're giving the same thing, right? It's like no picks, no chives on top of this. I know I got Eric in here saying it's spicy, but this is just straight up, no funny business. Let's just trade jerseys. All right. You get this guy, we'll take this guy. And I think it might work out for both people because, as we talked about, sometimes a fresh environment is all people need, right? And the last one I put on here is Jimmy Garoppolo. Why wouldn't Jimmy Garoppolo be on the list? Why wouldn't he? I mean, yeah, he doesn't like jump off the page, and he's definitely not somebody that if you got him on your team, you would say overnight that you're a contender. But Jimmy G also wins a high percentage of all of his games. He does have a little bit of injury risk. He can't stay healthy to save his life, but the guys like him a lot. He's definitely a team dude, and the team rallies around him. There's never any drama around him. I bet you when it was really bad in Arizona this year, like the stuff that we didn't get to see even on Hard Knocks, the yelling and the DeAndre Hopkins trying to cool down this overpaid 23-year-old that makes almost $50 million a year. Like when it got really messy and Kyler Murray was telling his own head coach to, F and shove it up his whatever. I bet they would have loved to have a Jimmy G on their team. I bet the Cardinals would have loved nothing more than a guy that just shows up, does his job, and the guys love him and does it pretty damn well. I mean, he's not great, but he definitely should have a job somewhere until he proves us that he's diminished, right? Unless you're that worried about the health thing. But I think Jimmy G works because of Josh McDaniels and his time in New England, and it's kind of a full circle thing. Josh McDaniels didn't pick Derek Carr. Josh McDaniels might have been in the boardroom when a guy named Jimmy Garoppolo was drafted. Josh McDaniels might feel just like how he did with Jared Stidham that I selected you, right? It's easier to invest in your own things, right? Take better care of things that you own. Um, because in a way, it's a reflection of your ability to scout. You don't want it to fail. And Josh McDaniels picked Jimmy G or probably had a say in it. And I think getting him back would be a pretty, I think it would be good for both of them at this point in their career because I do think Brock Purdy did too well to lose his job. And I don't think having Jimmy Garoppolo there is necessarily a good thing because you have Trey Lance as well. So what I would do is I would probably to take the pressure off of Trey Lance, I would just name Brock Purdy the starter and have kind of a secret QB competition. But you don't need three quarterbacks. So they did this year, but what are the chances that'll ever happen again? Okay. So go ahead, send Jimmy Garoppolo to the Raiders for I think you get a second round pick. Put it in the chat if you think I'm right or wrong on that. But I'm leaning number. The problem is the 49ers don't have a lot of leverage because they know that they have quarterbacks, right? So it's one thing when, let's say Jimmy was the only quarterback the Niners had and teams knew, like, man, this guy means a lot to you. We're going to have to give you a second for you to get rid of him. They're not in that situation. They're like, "We'll give you a fourth for him." And then if they say no, they're like, "Okay, keep him. I know you don't need 3 fucking quarterbacks. Have fun." So I do think the 49ers have a really interesting situation, much like they did last year. And just like Bill said, they went through four quarterbacks this year. They could still use him. I don't I just I don't think that you could really make a long-term plan based on that. I think there's a lot of dysfunction in that. First off, all 3 or you say 4, but I'm thinking of Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, and Brock Purdy. All 3 of them have to be willing to be, I would say, like, not the guy, right? And most of these guys that make it to the NFL, they got this far by being the guy in high school, the guy in Pop Warner. Then he went to college, became the guy. Then you get to the NFL. Some of these guys want to be the guy again. And some of the guys that tasted success, like Brock Purdy, might not be willing to give that spot up. And I just think it's not just, I mean, of course, in a dream world, give me 5 quarterbacks that are all, capable of playing good ball at any moment. But you also have to balance all these egos. And I think Kyle Shanahan proved he could do it last year, but these players are also getting older and maturing, and the egos are going to change as well. So, Jimmy to the Texans. Um, um, I don't think so. I think they're going to get Bryce Young because Jimmy Garoppolo at this point almost feels like you're settling. And if you're the Texans right now, right, where you just got uh D'Amico Ryans, okay, this is kind of the wave of excitement you're bringing. This is a season of rebirth. This is a season of promise. This is not the time to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. Like I think that would be a good move, and he could he could definitely help in the whatever Bryce Young's development. Gosh, I suck at words right now. But at the same time, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie what's that movie where they do giraffing? I think it's called Giraffe, but it's about an NFL guy and it's like between this guy and this guy and they end up getting the guy that makes the fans the most happy. Well, I think that might be one of those cases where the Texans, like anytime you're an 0 and 16, now 0 and 17, 1 and 16, 2 and 15, whatever. Anytime you literally are like a bottom feeder of the league, fans need something to be happy about. And I think ownership, when they think about selling out a stadium, they think we need the fans to have something to be excited about. As an owner, you have to ask yourself, will Jimmy G fill up seats? Right? And you also have to be smart because he may not do it initially, but if they start winning football games, maybe by week 10 we're sold out. There's a lot that goes into it. And I like what you said, a 1-year deal. Like that's what I'm thinking too. That I think that could work. Bryce Young and Jimmy Garoppolo on a 1-year deal. And honestly, it's a terrible thing to say. And I don't wish him to get hurt. But isn't it almost at this point like a guarantee that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to end up getting hurt at some point? his ankles are made of glass. Like, I hope he doesn't, but that would be your time to put Bryce Young in, right? And you just kind of lifted that burden. And I think that's a really, really good point. And unfortunately, I just think a lot of people are so quick to throw these players out there. And if they would have just waited I think in some cases, 7, 10 weeks, they would have had a completely different experiment than just throwing them to the Bears, to the Wolves. So I'm going to transition now to something that I care about, that I'm used to the Broncos storylines boring you guys to death. And I understand it's the offseason. Our numbers are going to be a little lower than normal, but we're hoping that we can retain some of you guys during the offseason. And I do think that this specific story is not a boring story by any means. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Broncos fan. The Denver Broncos, Sean Payton on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, while me and Jake from State Farm were dressed up as Jake from State Farm, we were getting ready for the Super Bowl, enjoying football, and Sean Payton was on a Zoom meeting and he was interviewing Rex Ryan. I was going to find a way to say it to dress it up. He interviewed Rex Ryan as the Jeez, this is a football podcast, right? He was interviewing Rex Ryan, who was a head coach for the Jets, then he head coach for the Bills, and then he's a talking head for the last 10 years. And a lot of people said, "I got to get a drink," not even because the Broncos got you, Bill. A lot of people thought, okay, Rex Ryan, does he have any interest in actually, going back to coaching, let alone taking what we would consider I don't want to say an ego cut or a pay cut. I don't think it's about money at this point, but why would Rex Ryan go, if he did go back to coaching, wouldn't he go back as a head coach? Why would he go back as a defensive coordinator? So I said, I look, me and Rick talked about it briefly, but I said, look, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I think Sean Payton is just doing what great coaches do. He's exploring every avenue, trying to see, okay, what are our options here? Well, then this story came out. Rex Ryan has emerged as a top candidate for the Broncos defensive coordinator role. Okay. Really? How? How did that happen? I mean, honestly, I think the fan base is really torn about it because there's a lot of people that are like, we do not need Rex Ryan. And me personally, I'm like, why not? Why not bring Rex Ryan in? They're also interviewing Vance Joseph, who was our head coach before Vic Fangio, who went on to be the defensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. And I like the idea of bringing back. I was trying to explain this to my girlfriend. I was like, okay, so why is this so crazy? Is because Vic Fangio was a head coach, right? So when we were interviewing him, I was like, it would be like having two head coaches on the same team. And then the story came out about Vance Joseph, and I said the same thing. I was like, he was our head coach for 2 years. It would be like having a head coach, two head coaches. But then the Rex Ryan thing came out, and it was totally different. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't just like having a head coach anymore. Like, it is a different level because you have head coaches who have head coaching experience, and then you have head coaches who were a head coach for a decade or maybe a little less, right? And they're not the same because it's one thing to try out to be a head coach. Like, if you like, you do think the Jets are thinking to themselves, like, good thing we have Nathaniel Hackett. He knows what it's like to be a head coach. We have two head coaches. No, of course not. There's levels to it. And not any of those head coaches that retire would I have thought would come out of retirement to be a coordinator unless he absolutely loved the job. So when I look at the job, of course, I got to look at the conference. Okay, so what? AFC West. Okay, Mahomes, we talked about him. He's a bad man. Okay, the Chargers, Justin Herbert, top 5. Then the Raiders, we don't know what they're going to be, but you're like, "Oh, this what does he love about this job?" He must really, really love the defense, and he must love Sean Payton. I feel like those are the 2 things, and he must really believe that they could turn it around together. Because Sean Payton, this is what he loves about being a head coach. I don't know if you saw, but he took a shirt that said Broncos, and he canceled out the B and wrote in a G, and it said Gronkos, and he, like, tagged Gronkowski in it, and was like, "How cool would it be? I could talk to the Penner ownership group. We could get a trademark, the Denver Broncos," and, like, we all laugh about it, but I kinda see, between the lines here. I'm like, Sean Payton, he's a good recruiter. He's being funny and lighthearted, and it's a joke, but it's also not a joke. He's also being extremely serious about um, getting anybody possible, and this just proves to me as a fan, whether it's Rob Gronkowski, who nobody was even considering, or Rex Ryan, who no one, especially nobody, was considering. He's been out for a while. Sean Payton is going to leave no stone unturned. He is going to go through every single stone, coach, player, retired. I don't care. Retired for a decade. Give me their number. He's trying everything he can. And I think that is the energy that this team needs right now. Like, there are some people that are like, we just need to get a staff together. Sean Payton, take all the time you need. Not that he needs anything, any of my opinion on it, but I don't have any problem with him taking an entire month to find the defensive coordinator to his team, because I can see how much it actually matters to him. And based on the depth of the search, he's trying to find the right guy. And I think he will. And I actually think Rex Ryan would be a really interesting, fun hire. Just seeing Rex Ryan and Sean Payton on the sideline together, that's a lot of fire. That's a lot of fire. So that's all I wanted to say about that, because we reported the Rex Ryan news. Well, now he's the favorite right now. He's risen to the top. And now I'll finish this episode off with the 5 NFL players who should be traded this offseason. Okay. We talked about it earlier. If you have a running back or a wide receiver that are getting paid in the top 3 in any category and you miss the playoffs, you have to get rid of them. You need draft picks, capital, and cap room. You need all of that stuff. And DeAndre Hopkins is number 1 on the list. Okay. So the Cardinals have a new general manager, they have a new head coach. Um, but it's going to be a little bit before they get to see their quarterback that they paid $230 million back onto the field. Because he torn his ACL in December. But a lot of people are saying this is going to take time, and they want to make sure that he's 100%. They don't want to rush it. He's young. He's got a long career. There's no reason to throw him out there too soon. So I don't even know if he's going to start by mid-season of 2023. Like, we might not see him until around November. So then you got to ask yourselves, is 2023 for Arizona, is that a tank? Not an intentional tank, but you don't have Kyler Murray. You don't have a lot of weapons. So would that be a tank? I mean, if it is, then it makes sense, because you could trade DeAndre Hopkins. What do you think you could get for him? A first, a second, and another receiver, probably. Okay, then you have a shitty season because you don't have D Hop, and you also don't have Kyler Murray. Let's say you draft in the top 5 next year. Okay, and then whoever you traded with, which Bill's saying right here, we're not in the hot market, but maybe to the Broncos would be good. I don't want him. We got. I mean, no, 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 no. I want DeAndre Hopkins. I really do, but we also have Tim Patrick, who is going to be back this year, and Tim Patrick is really good. A lot of people don't know who Tim Patrick is that well, but he got hurt in training camp after he signed his deal. I think Cortland Sutton is finally going to be utilized the right way, and Jerry Judy. There's enough there's enough going on right now with the Broncos where I feel confident in the receiving group we have with Sean Payton. But there are probably some teams out there that are in a lot worse scenario. I mean, I think the Broncos, as far as receivers, I mean, even Dulcich, our rookie tight end this year, he was very, very promising. Greg Dulcich had a fantastic year, and Albert O, who's a 6'7" guy that ran a 4.5. He's got ridiculous speed, and him and Nathaniel Hackett, I don't know, they butted heads, and he never got to play. Um, for whatever reason, he was inactive every week, and he wasn't hurt. And then when Jerry Rosberg took over the week after Nathaniel Hackett got fired, the first thing he did was go, "Why is Alberto inactive?" And Alberto was like, "I don't know. He won't activate me." He activates him, and Alberto goes off, gets a touchdown. So now you got honestly, you got two good tight ends. I think you got three good receivers. I think KJ Hamler has a very high ceiling, but they were nursing his ACL, MCL. The injury bug has been bad. But if we can get this team healthy again and get a better training staff, figure out why they're getting injured so much, I would not say the Denver Broncos are a team that needs to make an aggressive move for DeAndre Hopkins. But what about the Giants? What about the Giants? Because you missed it because you came in a little bit late, but I was just making a point that let's see if I can find it here. I think I might have gotten rid of it. I was making a point here about the running backs and whether you should pay running backs or not. And I know Saquon Barkley is on one of those years, top paid. I just wrote top running backs. So here we go. Saquon Barkley, what is he? Number 7? No, number 8. He's making $7 million a year. Okay. Let's take a look at this. Okay. Okay, Barkley's off to a head start, blah blah blah. I thought I don't know why it's not in here. Isn't Saquon Barkley's contract up? That's all I'm trying to figure out right now. Da, 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 da. Saquon Barkley. If we give him 14 million, he'd be a third. Second and a third for Hop. If we give him 14 mil, he'd be a third. Okay. Are you okay. So, okay, here it is officially. Saquon Barkley is making 7.79 million, 31 million over 4 years. But they're talking about tagging him, and I think he'd play for that. That's interesting because why not? I mean, I think isn't the tag they take the top 5 highest paid players and then they just average it between that? Because right now he's making 7 and let's say 5 is 12.5, 12.6, 15, 15, say he'd probably make 13.5 million. He wants 14. Yeah, I would say the tag will probably it'll be less than it'll be just under 14. But that's cool that you know that already. It's a real fan keeping up with your players like that. Yeah, I think it would be a little under 14, but that also means that he's probably comfortable playing for 13 because if your number is no shit, um that's negotiating. Like if your number is 14, then you would in public your number would be 15 and you can't budge from 15. And then if it drops to 14, you're like, "Fine, I'll do it for 14," but that was your number the whole time. Barkley probably's thinking this whole time. He's like, "Yeah, I'll play for 13 and a half." That's a good amount of money for a running back, but honestly, I don't think he should. And I'll tell you why. Is because I mean, first off, anybody that plays on a franchise tag is betting on themselves. That is first thing, right? They're betting on themselves. They're betting on the I mean, especially a guy like Barkley, who a lot of people were telling him, "Oh, you're kind of like a comeback player of the year." Nobody, if you play fantasy, no one expected him to be number one in so many things up to like week 8, week 9. He's just like he was that dude, and then he got shut down for I don't know. There was a couple weeks there where he wasn't himself, but the way the season started, it was like Saquon Barkley's back, like vintage Saquon Barkley, right? And that's what happened to Zeke Elliott. Is just like Saquon came out of Penn State, had that amazing rookie year, and then he got hurt, and then he came back and played. And usually, when you have a running back or a positional player that does a lot of cutting, it's the second year that he actually like gets back to his normal form. I told you about KJ Hamler. It's like we barely used him because we were nursing his injury the whole year. Next year he should be like good to go, right? You start trusting your cutting again. I don't think Barkley, I you know, Ezekiel Elliott kind of gave a bad rep because it was like we kind of assumed Saquon Barkley was just doing what Zeke did, but Saquon was just recovering from an injury. That's all. And I just I think if Saquon does bet on himself on a tag and he gets hurt again, I mean, you're missing out on a lot of money because look, you said his number's 13.5. They offered him 3 years. They offered him 3 years for 12 and he said no. 12 years every year, so a $36 million contract at 12. Yeah, I got you. First 10 games, he was the man. But you put the team on your back and you get tired. And the last few he declined. Yeah. Yeah, because they found out if you stop the run, then they can't beat you with their arm. And then uh and then they started trusting Daniel Jones more after like week 14, 15 to start actually letting it loose. Hey, let's see what we got here. And it was like, oh, and then the running game comes back. Okay, that makes sense. But if Saquon Barkley ends up getting hurt for any reason, then he's gonna be okay. So he's gonna be out for a whole year. He's still gonna get what do we say, 13 million? So he's gonna get 13 million, but then next year, okay, now let's say he has two ACL injuries in 4 years. Who's gonna give him a $90 million contract? Nobody. No one's gonna pay him like that. When you look at Ezekiel Elliott, his contract, right? I feel like the first thing you think is, why does Zeke have a $90 million contract? It's because he has a good agent, and it's because he capitalized on his value when it was at its highest. And I do think Saquon, he might be at his highest right now because he's not a really, really young running back anymore. And he's kind of proven that he can sustain greatness for a long time. All he had to do was come back from his injury. But if he gets hurt again, all of a sudden it dips back down. And you see how quick people forgot about Saquon until this year? It'll happen just as fast. I mean, this is such a here and now league. People forget about people so fast. Honestly, I wouldn't pay any of these people. And I said that in the beginning of this episode. I said Alvin Kamara, wouldn't pay him $75 million. Dalvin Cook, very, very, very good running back. He gets hurt a lot. I'm not paying him $63 million. And Christian McCaffrey, $64 million. Yeah, I'd probably pay him just because he's such a threat catching the ball. But this is the problem with paying a guy $90 million. And I'm just telling you this specifically, Bill, because you didn't see this in the beginning. Marquez Valdez Scantling, Juju Smith Schuster, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore, their salaries altogether, they make $17 million. And if you add their two running backs, they make under $20 million, which is crazy. So basically, the amount of money that what's the receiver for the Commanders? Scary Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin makes more money, made more money this year than all of the backfield and receiver core of the Chiefs, all of them. So, do you need to pay a running back? Not if you have a quarterback like Mahomes, but is Daniel Jones a quarterback like Mahomes? See? So maybe Daniel Jones is the one that you don't have to pay a lot of money to, that opens up that extra money that allows you to buy a DeAndre Hopkins or re-sign a Saquon Barkley. But at the same time, what if Daniel Jones comes around and says, I want to be valued as Daniel Jones comes around and says, no, I want to be valued as one of the top G's. I want to be a top 10 wide receiver or quarterback. I want someone to buy in, right? Then all of a sudden, dude, there's so much being balanced here. But I think if you could get Daniel Jones, this is probably the perfect time to do it because he has a lot of potential probably, but he isn't worth paying yet, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of a gamble because you could end up being the idiot or the genius, depending on how Daniel Jones develops, right? But I saw a lot of things that I thought were promising. And I think right now, you could probably get Daniel Jones to, let's see, I think you could get him to sign a, Rodgers is making 50 mil a year. And I think you could realistically get Daniel Jones to sign like a 15, 15 million a year for 6 years, which would be 60 times 30. I think you could get him to sign a 6-year contract worth $90 million. You could get Daniel Jones. What you said, 35 mil for 3 years. Wow, that's even less than I said. I let's see how that compares. Let's see whose number that would be. Let's see. Top paid Q. I had it pulled up earlier, but I left it. Here's our top paid quarterback. So that long term, I mean, that's why it's a gamble, but it's also it's not like a crazy bad gamble because you have the longer you go, the more you have. I think like the opportunity to release him, you take less of a dead cap hit. So you got him at least for 3 years, right? Because that's like when you can afford to cut him because you lose a lot of money. But then after like the fourth year, it's like if he's just sucking, you can get rid of him. But if he's just killing it, he's under contract for, another 3 years. So, and I think that's like the part of football that the best dudes do. Like when they got in and signed Cortland Sutton for 60 million and Tim Patrick for like 50 million, I was like, that's genius. That is so smart because these guys were on the brink of having one of those seasons where they want top 10 money. And the Broncos during the bye week, right when they got a taste of what it was like to be a top receiver, put money in front of them and they had to take it because they were making what, $2-3 million a year. And now you're throwing up $50 million at them. And they're like, yeah, I'll take it. And meanwhile, Tyreek Hill is signing $120 million contracts where we signed all four of our receivers for the price of that. So you do have to, I think, be able to predict it's just like the stock market, to be honest. It's like, you're predicting what it's going to become, what you're risking versus reward, all that. Let's see. So here are the top paid quarterbacks. Rodgers, obviously number one, 50 million. This says Kyler Murray's number two at 46. It's actually not true. Oh, that's weird. The other list I looked at said it was Russell Wilson. Now Russell Wilson's all the way at 9 at 35 million a year. Let's see. Oh, I just wanted to see who wrote this article so I can. Oh, Adam Schefter. This is the gospel. Okay, so you're saying, let's see, let me just see that number one time. 35 million for each for each of the 3 years. Okay, okay, okay. And then he said, "I got I get the long deal, spread the cap. This kid just needs some stability." He had a carousel of OCs from his whole career. Look at what Dabble did with him. I am not trying to turn this into a Giants. No, dude. Honestly, you're good. It's the off season. Like this is the time to dick around. Um, 15. Okay, so 35 mil for each year. I think is a little hefty, to be honest. A little bit. Um, why does it only show me the top 10? What's that website I was on earlier? Oh, I think this is it. Top 10. No, it just shows me the top 10 every time. What was that? NBC Sport, highest paid quarterbacks in 23. Because there was a tier. The reason I was looking for it is because there was a overthecap.com. That's what it is. Okay. So I'm on overthecap.com if you ever want to just like pull up the same page. But okay, so if you were to do the $15 million a year, and this is why I picked that number, is because there's a significant drop. So Aaron Rodgers, 50 million a year, Russell Wilson, 49. Then it goes to Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson at 46. Then it goes to 45, 43, 40, 35, 33, 32, 30, 29, 25. So it's been dropping 1 to 2 mil every bracket. But look at this. It goes from 25 million all the way to 15. So there's at this point, there's not a quarterback that is in a $20 million bracket. It's like you're either good enough to make 25 or more, or you don't deserve to make more than 15. So that's why I think it could be a good time to, you know what? Daniel Jones, give him 20 million a year for 4 years. No, I still think you should go with that long contract. Just buy in, man. You know, I sometimes I feel like when you buy in, it pays off. Let me ask you this last question. What is Daniel Jones at this point in his career more promising than Eli Manning was? At 29, I'd take him. 29 mil. Damn. Bill. Ryan Tannehill's making 29 million. So I mean, honestly, I mean, when I look at this and let me see, they're almost the same person, but Daniel has legs. I agree. That's why I asked that. But when I look at the quarterback contracts, right? All I see are bad contracts. I mean, the Patrick Mahomes one, genius, right? I would have done the same thing. I would have been like, "This is our guy. Here, sign this. This is yeah, you're a chief for life now." What was the contract? 10 years. Genius. Okay, but look at some of these other ones, like Deshaun Watson's. Honestly, I was blown away. $230 million fully guaranteed. Okay, like why though? You know, I mean, you had Baker Mayfield. I mean, I could understand if like they just hadn't had a quarterback in, you know, a Jets amount of time, but it just didn't make sense to me. Josh Allen, Josh Allen actually has a good contract, I think. He makes 43 million a year. But look at some of these. Now I'm going to get to the shitty ones. Okay. Um you could make an argument Matthew Stafford's worth 40 million a year. It still to me seems high. And I'm a Matthew Stafford fan, but it's just Kyler Murray makes 46 million a year. I mean, you got to be shitting me. Like Kyler Murray is a good quarterback. He's also 26 years old. Um, I don't think he's worth $46 million at all. This is where it said Russell Wilson makes 49 million a year, and that I won't even go there. Jared Goff makes 33 million. Kirk Cousins make 35. Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford make the same amount of money at 40. What's really surprising is Tom Brady makes 25. Tom Brady made less than Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill to try to keep that team. He had a 2023 void option, and Kirk Cousins has a void option at the end of 2024. Dak Prescott has a void option at the end of 2025. Trying to see if there's any quarterbacks that have. Ooh, Sam Darnold's an unrestricted free agent. So when you get between, let's say there's only two quarterbacks. Okay, so it goes Tom Brady 25. Boom, we drop all the way to 15. There's only two quarterbacks between 15 and 14. And then we go all the way to 9, right? So these are kind of weird brackets the way it's divided. It's like you're either worth less than 10 or you're worth 15 or you're worth 25. But nobody's worth, 12 and nobody is worth 20. So the first drop goes from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield and Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston makes 14 million, Baker Mayfield makes 15. Then the next drop goes to Marcus Mariota, Trevor Lawrence because he's young, Joe Burrow, which is about to shoot up to the list, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Tua is only makes 7 a year because of that young contract. Um, and then Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky. So you get the idea. We're getting into like just guys that you can service if you need to, but we haven't even got to Daniel Jones yet. So Jimmy Garoppolo, 7 million. Justin Herbert, 6 million. Teddy Bridgewater, 6.5. Justin Herbert and Teddy Bridgewater make $100,000 of a difference. They make 6.5, 6.6. That is insane to me. Justin Herbert's a top 5 quarterback, and Joe Burrow is definitely a top 3 quarterback. And they both make under 10 million a year. And then here's Daniel Jones right after Teddy Bridgewater. 6 million, 6.4. So I think if you went up to Daniel Jones and you were like, hey, we're gonna double your yearly amount. How does 13 million a year sound? Instead of making 6, you're gonna make, let's say 12 million a year for 6 years. I think that would be a good deal for you guys because now you can really help Daniel Jones out. So now you're not blowing 50 million a year on a quarterback. You go get yourself a DeAndre Hopkins. You give Saquon Barkley the 13 million he needs. You pick up a couple, I don't know what you guys need, but maybe a top 5 tight end, somebody, the Giants might not be that far away. I will say that. And I do think that at times teams just kind of sneak up on us. And I think that could be the Giants next year. They could be a sneaky team. So when it comes to the trades, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. Mike Evans, okay? There's been chatter that's popped up around T. Higgins, but the Bengals should probably re-up T. Higgins. They probably shouldn't move him. DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy were the other 2 wide receivers who crossed my mind. But Evans isn't the right guy for this slot. So Tom Brady's retired. So I don't really know how competitive the Buccaneers are going to be this year. But even if they were to somehow bring in another good veteran quarterback like Derek Carr, I don't know how high the ceiling is for the team because we saw what Tom Brady was able to do with him. Winning the terrible NFC South, maybe they could do that. But actually competing for a title, I feel like that's you'd be hard pressed to say that they could fight for a title with Derek Carr. And I'm not just saying this because of Rick, but I do think that Mike Evans should immediately, if you are if you're the Chicago Bears, you need to pick up your phone and make a phone call to bring in Mike Evans to the Bears immediately. Mike Evans to the Bears makes a lot of sense to me. It reminds me of when Amari Cooper got dealt from the Raiders to the Cowboys. Okay. I think that could be a really big thing, just like Amari was big for Dak. I think Mike Evans could be huge for Justin Fields. So I think it's time, definitely, to make that move. Gesicki. Oh, Mike Gesicki. Yeah, Mike Gesicki's a freaking good dude. I mean, he's been solid for Miami for a long time. Obviously, there's always some kind of offense or defensive tackle that comes available. This year, it's Deron Payne. He was a first round pick. He made his first Pro Bowl, piling up 11.5 sacks and defended 5 passes, but his rookie contract's up. So what's next? So if they let him walk in free agency, it would be tough. He's still 25 years old and fresh off a season where he displayed the kind of interior disruption the team wants. But Washington already sunk so much money and draft currency into the D line. Is a long-term mega deal with Payne really feasible? Let's open up door number 3, the tag and trade. And this is a scenario a lot of people are going to be in this year. Tag him or trade him. Well, Darren Payne is a young dude, but man, the Commanders have a really, I mean, Chase Young, um, I can't remember the other names right now, but I've always, and if you even listen to my predictions going into this year, I always said, dude, the Commanders, when it comes to defense, are the real deal. Another defensive lineman, Roy Robertson Harris. It's another D lineman, not really buzz news, but these are the guys that win in the trenches of the games. Like you need a couple of these nasty dudes, like a Chris Jones on your team. So um, I think probably Rick knows who this is because he's a former Bear, but that's another spot. We'll see where he goes. And now here we go back to the buzzworthy stuff. And this is probably a really big name that maybe you haven't heard. Jalen Ramsey. Yeah. Yeah. This is an interesting one. This is an interesting one because Jalen Ramsey is a shutdown corner and he's elite. And a lot of people know that. And the injury bug hit LA really hard this year, and they weren't able to really compete, and it just seems like there was a lot of missing pieces. They were the worst team record-wise following winning the Super Bowl in history. So, at some point, that F 'em picks mentality was gonna come back and bite them, and me and Rick talked about this, and we said, "Is it worth the Super Bowl?" Rick says yes. And I'm on the fence about it. I like having a Super Bowl, but I also like watching meaningful football in January, and I don't necessarily like the idea of selling my soul for 7 straight years of knowing in the middle of October that we're out. Like that I think I would rather be the 49ers the last 6 years and every single year, maybe not win the Super Bowl, but maybe go to a Super Bowl and have a chance to go every year. So, but that's not what the Rams did. And now the Rams are going to have to make a decision what to do with Jalen Ramsey. It would be tough to see Ramsey leave Los Angeles because it kind of feels like he really became close to, LA. You got the Lakers and LeBron, and he's kind of like fits in over there. But it makes plenty of sense that he would leave just with the way the the F them picks mentality. It got him in a scenario where it's time for Sean McVay to probably try to build some of that capital back up. And I think it seems that the cornerback could change his offseason. And one of the places that I think would be cool is number one. I don't know if even he would consider this, but back to Jacksonville for like a homecoming. Because last time Jalen Ramsey was in Jacksonville, what did they make it to the AFC Championship game in 2018? I think if Jalen Ramsey joined the Jags this year, I could see the Jags going to the AFC Championship. I really could. And another team, Cincinnati. I could see Cincinnati just adding a dog to that defense. You know what I mean? Because look, I don't personally, when it comes to beating Mahomes, you have a decision to make, especially as a coach. Are we going to do it with firepower or are we going to do it with defense? And we saw, I mean, when the Broncos drafted 2 years ago, it was like The first round, the Broncos select Jerry Jeudy. Second round, Broncos select KJ Hamler, the fastest 40-yard dash in the draft. And all the people came on. They were like, so the Broncos are going a different way with it. They're saying, look, we're going to beat you with firepower. Well, that never worked. We haven't ever beat the Chiefs. So it all was, it was a great idea, but it didn't work. And what we have seen work, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl, is defense. We've seen defense works, and defense will always work, and defense will always win championships. And honestly, what kept the Eagles from winning that championship game? Defense, clearly, easily. The defense did a terrible job, and Jalen Hurts did everything he could to win. The answer is not always offensively, and I think if the Bengals are sitting down and being honest with themselves, they know that they have one hurdle that's kind of in their way every year, just like Peyton Manning did with Tom Brady, and it's going to be the Chiefs. And I think adding Jalen Ramsey, that I think that's the approach. I don't think it's adding, they already have the deepest wide receiver core in the league for crying out loud. But I think if you could add a guy like Jalen Ramsey, ooh, Bengals would be dogs. And I actually think they would win their division by like 2 games, a margin of 2 victories. I'm gonna hit these chats really quick. He said Heineke. I thought he did pretty well when he was in. Not defense, though. No, the worst following a victory was probably us because of the strike after we won the first time. Yes, I'm old. You remember the strike? I was 18 when we got our first win. The problem with Mahomes is not Mahomes. Yeah, he can shovel pass himself out of trouble. But without Kelsey, he's a breakout player that no one can cover. Mahomes always has a target. That's Mahomes always, yeah. Mahomes' ability to innovate is what makes him so good. And we looked at that by the numbers. We said, wait a minute, because there was something not adding up. And it was that Mahomes was the most pressured quarterback in the league, but yet his offensive line averaged the most time. They were giving Mahomes the most time. So, I mean, put it together. You got an offensive line that's holding what, let's say a minimum of 6 seconds. That's a long time. And then on top of that, Mahomes is holding the ball long enough to be pressured. So you might be holding it 9, 10 seconds. So basically, the receivers go and run their route, and then Mahomes runs out, and then the receivers just go to where they think Mahomes would like him to be in this moment. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it to make it work so well, but it's definitely I think the big guys need to get more credit. That offensive line is stacked, and I do think just like there's a reason all 4 of their wide receivers don't even equal the salary of a DJ Moore or Terry McLaurin. Is because they don't need to pay him. That's why they let Tyreek walk. And it's kind of circling back around, but it's true. So these are the things we're going to be keeping an eye on. A little bit of news for you guys. I actually got out of work today and I found out that my grandma's in a hospice. She had a surgery and it didn't go super well. So she's moving to a hospice room, and I called her and she I basically told her, I was like, I want to come see you soon. She's said, you better come quick. So I'm going to be leaving, not forever, but I am going to be flying out tomorrow. I'm going to actually fly into Chicago and then go up to Milwaukee. And I'll be back next week. And I'm bringing my laptop. So I'm going to be I'm going to be doing our pod on Monday. It's not going to get in the way of my time with my grandma because we're just seeing her this weekend. But then I'm going to go back with my mom because she lives in Nashville, and we're going to hang out for, like 2 days, and then I'm going to head back on Wednesday. But for Monday's episode, you may see a different background. And yeah, hope maybe I can introduce you to my mom. It would be cool. But we'll have Rick back. I just want to thank you guys for being here. And yeah, Bill, he's like, I know you do, I'll be here for me to get back. Thanks, man. That's a great feeling too, because there is always this kind of feeling like if you take a break or something like that, like you'll never recover your following again. You'll never get the people back. The algorithm will punish you on YouTube. It's like so you would be surprised how much a little comment like that actually means. But I'm actually going to be bringing my computer anyway. So this is actually one of the ways that I actually decompress from real life is just talking about football with you guys. So definitely not something I want to pause. So I will be back here for our Thursday's episode. And don't forget, if you missed it, we're going to be starting trivia. We're going to be watching, we're going to pull a game out of a hat, like a Super Bowl from a random year. And we're actually going to be able to play it on our screen. And we'll literally be watching the game together. And that's going to be a lot of fun, and we're also going to be keeping up with news and stuff like that. And definitely, if you're new to this channel, definitely subscribe and check out our shorts. And then I'm going to be releasing an episodic series, Only Football with Kyle, that is going to be uploaded on Wednesdays. It's probably going to be uploaded around 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're still hashing out the specific time, but it'll be happening on Wednesdays, and that's only for Instagram and YouTubers specifically. So no access on Facebook and stuff like that, but YouTube, it'll be under channels, Only Football with Kyle. And honestly, to be quite frank, it's going to be a lot like this, but I'm probably going to have more of what I'm looking at on this computer interfaced up there. And it may be less interactive just because I won't be live streaming it. I will be recording it privately and then uploading it so I can cut it and, just make it perfect for you guys. But then we'll always be back here to live stream and chat with you guys on our regular days. Um, and then Bill is saying, "You have other channels, although you have to educate me on the others someday." No, so I'm basically I could probably explain it better. So if you go to our YouTube page, there's an area that will say, let's say you just type in on the search bar Star Six Media, and then you click on the logo, and then it'll say Home Video Shorts Live Playlist. Community channels. So if you go to playlists, I'm going to say it says Only Football, Big League Chicago Sports Strip Live, 3 Up, 3 Down, JCA Sports, EAFP. Make sure you guys check out the other ones. Hockey, Slot Shot. We had a really good time interviewing um, Rusty from Slot Shot. Shout out Rusty if you're listening. But it's just going to be in these playlists. I'll turn my computer. So it'll just say like only football with Kyle, and it'll be its like own. Um, don't worry about it, Bill. Like I just had to learn all of this stuff this year, but I didn't even know you could find playlists of different channels. Like Rick had to explain this to me so many times. It's actually pretty embarrassing, so don't feel bad. So yeah, that'll be under playlists. And honestly, I got your Twitter stuff. So when I upload my first video of it, I'll also just tweet something at you. I'm still learning. See, I'm still learning how to say it, but I'll let you know that a video's up so you could check it out and stuff like that. And we did have legendary pets come in here. Tyler Fink is a Packers fan, but he came in and actually pleaded that we would trade Rodgers for Mahomes. And I told him that would never happen in a million years. That would never happen. But I like where his head's at. You got to stay hopeful. It's the off season. We're all going to the Super Bowl as far as I'm concerned. We're all undefeated again, and it's all possible. So, thank you guys for listening. Honestly, thank you. And next time you see us, me and Rick will be back together. Bill said, "I'm really only here for you and Rick. You two are really cool. Appreciate the love, Bill. And we appreciate having you in here. And we will see you guys. Let's see, what is it? Wednesday, Thursday. Is today Thursday? Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We'll see you in like 4 days. All right, guys. See ya. I suck at this.